na 8 ni group ranches ambayo wamefanya transition, na 9 ni area ambayo ilikuwa ya trustland. Na tunajua ya kuwa karibu community 188 kutoka county 11 wamewekwa kwa Kenya Gazette waweze kusajiliwa pia. Kwa hivyo ukiangalia kwa uchache, tumejaribu kufanya maendeleo hapo, na pia namna vile tunatumia ardhi yetu tunajaribu kuona namna gani inaweza kutusaidia. Mbeleni ilikuwa ni serikali tu ilikuwa nasimamia hizi sheria, inapatia sisi tuweze kujisimamia hii ardhi yetu ya community, na namna gani tunaweza kuanzisha miradi zetu ambayo inaweza kutusaidia direct, kama vile ya carbon credit, ya conservation, na ya mafugaji, na mingi ambaye serikali pia inaweza kufanya. Kwa hivyo bila kupoteza wakati, tutashughulikia swali 3. Swali ya kwanza, what are key barriers to land registration in pastoralist areas and how that can be overcome to ensure land tenure for pastoralist communities can be achieved? Swali ya pili ambayo tutaishughulikia katika hii, naona Dida amefika, nilikuwa nimekuintroduce in absentia, chukua kiti. Swali ya pili, how can sustainable natural resource management be integrated into local governance to ensure long-term resilience and equitable distribution of benefits? Na swali ya tatu ambayo tutaishughulikia, what opportunities exist for pastoralist communities to engage in carbon credits and how this can be structured to benefit both the environment and the livelihood of the communities. Utakuwa huko hapa ukikaa utaonekana. Angalia, chukua hiyo kitu tuenda mwisho. Hapa ukikaa utaonekana. Mpelekee hii kitu. Kwa hivyo bila kupoteza wakati, nataka kumwalika Amos kutoka kwa Ministry of Land aanze kushughulikia swali ya kwanza, what are the barriers to land registrations in pastoral areas and how this can be overcome. Kila panelist ndapatia dakika 10 tu, ama dakika 5 mpaka 10. Ikifika 10 nitakusimamisha, lakini ukiwa 5 nitakuwa mzuri. So kila mtu nitapatia 5 up to 10. Ukiclock 10 nitakusimamisha kwa sababu hatuna time. Alafu baada ya hapo nitafungua muweze kuuliza maswali, tujadiliane, na msisahau ya kuwa hii conference tunataka kuchukua recommendation ya hapa vile imesemekana tupeleke kwa viongozi. Kwa hivyo tunataka at least recommendation moja muhimu ama 2. Mambo ya ardhi na natural resource tutapelekea leadership conference ambayo itafanyika Wajia mwezi wa Disemba. Na mimi najua kawaida mambo ya ardhi inakuwa na changamoto mingi, so nataka watu wapunguze hamasa, tuweze kuuliza maswali tu. Asanteni sana. So Amos, karibu.
Hamjamboni. Nimewasikia kweli? Asante Bwana Njaso. Kwa dakika 10 zijazo nitajaribu kuangazia hiyo swala la what are the barriers, or rather what are the challenges to land registration. I want to frame it and say I want to look at the challenges that are faced when you are trying to register the land that is held communally in Kenya. Maybe a flashback. When we enacted the new constitution, which is now the Constitution of Kenya, in Article 61, we have three categories of land categorized there: public, community, and private. That tells you all land in Kenya has to be registered in any of those categories. Then going straight to the question, why register community land? One, in registering community land, you address historical marginalization. For the last 60 years, in this country, we have only done 30%. 70% of all that land mass in Kenya is what we call OFOs and communal lands. And if you take a flight on our space, you realize how big those communal lands are. So because of the size, they ought to be recognized. Registering those communal lands will reduce land-based conflicts. It will also safeguard investments by conferring those communal lands a security of tenor. In those communal lands, that is where all mega development projects are being directed, and to prepare our people to benefit and be compensated the way other parts of these countries have been done. It's important you put those communal lands into registration. Because in this country, the only evidence of land ownership that is recognized is a title deed. Whether private, whether freehold or leasehold or communal, a title is a title. Those high potential areas, the ones we have been told in the morning, they are very congested. There is no room left there. So the only dispersal area where people can migrate to is in those communal lands. So it's important you secure those communal lands so that you are leveraged when you are negotiating with somebody who is looking for space. You have a title and you can negotiate, you can bargain. Over 60% of wildlife in this country, outside national parks, in what we call conservancies, are hosted in those communal lands. Putting these lands into registration will also address benefit sharing protocols from investments. Now, I know I have very few minutes left. Let me address the challenges so far which we have faced when we are attempting to put those communal lands into registration. And before I go there, let us not assume there is a problem, because with all those, with the challenges that are perceived to be there, we have made some progress. And I want to give you a synopsis, a summary. Like Kipia, we have done 13 communities. We have registered the communities and also registered their land. Because in community land registration, there are two registrations. The community serves to be registered to become a body corporate, and then the other registration, once they have identified their land, you also register their land. In Samburu, we have registered 26 communities, former group ranches, and 2 former trust lands. Those are 26 communities, and the community lands registered in Samburu are 24. In Baringo, we have done 2 successfully. West Pokot, we have done 9 communities registered and 5 community lands registered. Kajiado, we have 2. Those are former group ranches which transited to community land. Turkana, we have 16 communities registered and 3 community lands recently registered. In Mandela, we have 1 community registered, but we are yet to register any community land. And the challenges I'll explain you to what that for Mandela means. In Garissa, we have one community registered and also one community land registered. In Tana River, we have one community registered and no community land registered. Kilifi, we have one community registered, no community land registered. So in total, we have 78 communities registered and 56 community lands registered. Now, in the course of registering those communities and their land, there are challenges we have faced which have slowed our progress. And I don't know, you guys, I don't know whether you are aware today, there was a group that was in Nairobi presenting a petition to the parliament that the ministry responsible for community land registration has not been able, has been slow in addressing their plight. They are calling themselves Community Land Owners Association of Kenya. I don't know whether you guys have representatives up there. The first process in community land registration is presentation of submission of inventories by the county governments. And in the course of doing that, we have noted there have been a lack of concurrence between some county governments and the communities on the community land units for registration, for recognition. Some county governments used constituencies as a unit. Others used sub-counties. And then we have seen some communities argue that historically they have never identified themselves on the basis of those administrative and the political units. You remember when around towards the end of the statutory period, when the time for submission of inventories was running out, inventories were submitted. And when the cabinet secretary processed them, they realized they don't meet the threshold. Possibly there wasn't enough public participation. Possibly those inventories were unworkable and they were returned. The county governments were asked to revise those inventories. Some have not responded. For example, Mandera and Garissa. Failure to respond. We don't know whether we use the earlier inventory of constituencies or we give them more time to respond. And you know, the national government and the county governments, we don't want to put ourselves on an head-on collision. We want to have the synergy that was emphasized here in the morning. So in non-submission or non-responsiveness, there we are forced to slow and give those devolved units time to possibly consult further. We have a challenge of the register of members that is being used. So we devised one, a standard register of members. You find that there are some communities, and we have examples, who want to retain those patriarchal structures, leaving out women and the young persons, minors. And the matters of gender nowadays, they are serious matters. We have had issues of negative ethnicity and intra- and inter-county boundary disputes, potentially leading to conflict. I want to give you an example of Kapendo, where we have the Baringo and the Turkana. There is Kainuku. We have Turkana and the West Pokot. And the potential conflict there is real. If you mishandle such a matter, it can flare up. And we don't want later on people to say people are fighting because of this issue of land registration that is taking place there. So, in our community land registration, we have deliberately avoided those areas where there is a potential for conflict. It is security, especially in parts of northern Kenya. When I talk of insecurity, I mean the kind of registration contemplated, especially in section 8.6, you are expected to come up with a cadastre. So you are expected to georeference those boundaries. And in georeference those boundaries, there are machines that you need to occupy for a minimum of 12 hours so that you fix that boundary. Because the boundaries are supposed to be georeferenced and fixed. And because of the insecurity, I'm looking at a place like Mandera and Garissa, where you can easily endanger or even lose the lives of officers. And that is a real thing, you know. We have issues of court cases. In Mandera, a community called Morore, they went to court. They were given an order that the registrar was ordered to register them as a community. So here, and you have to comply with the court orders. Here is a community that is registered. But where is the land? So there, you have put the cart before the horse. Yes, you have a registration as a community. But where is the land? The land you want to claim, we know it is disputed. So there, and because you think you have an advantage because you are registered as a community, there you even confuse us. We don't know where. And you know, land matters, especially land of pastoralists, need to be handled with a lot of sensitivity. I talked of fixing boundaries, and this part of Kenya, geodetic controls have not been intensified. Have not been intensified, and they have not been extended. Although I'm aware recently the Council of Governors got a lot of equipment from FAO. Even us as a state department, we have a lot of equipment. But extension of those controls is a challenge. I think if you are to fix a boundary, a place like here, you will need at least three officers, 3 vehicles. One you send to Embu, the other one you send to Nanyuki, and possibly another one to Limurut, so that you triangulate, so that you can extend those controls to a place like here, so that you can use. So those intricacies, those details, they are a challenge to us, and they contribute to slow implementation of the Community Land Act. There are overriding and competing interests. You go to a place like Tana River, they gave us inventories. When you do a search on the availability of that land, you realize the inventory you have been given contain lands which have been committed in the name of private ranches, given by the same county government with a lease that is yet to expire. And you are expected to convert that land and give it to the communities. Similarly, a place like Lamu, all that land in Lamu is public land, which is yet to be converted. And the county government submitted an inventory. And you know, by description, there are only 2 categories of land which qualify to be community land: former unregistered trust lands and formerly undissolved group ranches. So those competing interests, we have come across them. And there's an example I wanted to give you on insecurity and border disputes. A place like Tana River, the county government gave us an inventory, part of it. And the section of the county leadership, political leadership, they came to the cabinet secretary and they argued, why have you gazetted a section of the county and a part of it has been left out? Here I'm talking of county government submitting inventories in piecemeal. That submission could be well-intentioned. But when you have not told the people what you are doing, they'll feel the one you have submitted was calculated to exclude others. Finally, county governments themselves, and I have an example, a county government submits an inventory, and then later on, they write and they say, can you suspend this exercise? Because in that inventory, there are towns, market centers that we need them isolated because they are public lands. And in the inventory that you submitted, you did not specify that this inventory, these and these and these trading centers needs to be exempted. So when a county government writes, we don't take that one for granted. That is government talking to government. So, and they request this exercise be suspended. So we suspend until the matter is resolved and we are given and go ahead. Now, what are the possible remedies? Around 5 minutes?
Less than 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. To address those issues, we recommend, and this is what we are doing to address those issues. We are building partnerships between state and non-state actors. We work closely with the civil society organizations, and I want to say, even if the progress we have made so far has been largely due to the support, wholesome support, even financial support from civil society organizations. We want to enhance intergovernmental synergies at all levels, national, county, and the grassroots. And we are actively doing that. We believe in consultation. We believe in talking to people. We believe in getting people's consent and getting people understand what is required and they pass a resolution. Budgetary allocations. I'm talking of funding, and the lack of funding is a real challenge. Because I don't know whether we have a budget item on the community land. I'm yet to see it. We recommend and we propose where there are large-scale infrastructure projects, like where the Lapset passes through, the oil fields, the Horn of Africa Gateway Development Project, the power stations, geothermal, and the wind power development sites be prioritized for registration so that the people whose land has been taken by those investments be adequately compensated. Finally, we believe when you take a matter to court, what you will get in court is an order or a judgment. but not a solution. When you want a solution, you consult, you negotiate, you talk and agree. I'm talking of matters of community lands. Addressing a community issue is not like addressing an individual or a group issue. Community issues are very complex. We recommend, and when you look at Section 38 to 42 of the Community Land Act, a lot of acreage is given to alternative dispute resolution. We recommend, even those in the county boundary issues, in the community and community versus community disputes, be handled by the people, the communities themselves, through their existing land governance structures. And I know pastoralists have very rich structures to handle complex land problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amos. Thank you very much, Amos. Muli. If you heard him speak, you hear him saying this number of communities are registered, this number of land is registered. I hope you understand why he's putting it that way. Because community land registration has two phases. First phase, you register communities. Second phase, you register land. That's why some people are just stuck at community registration and they have not gone to register land. The interesting case where he says there are some communities that are actually registered, but they are likely to have no land. So without wasting time, I want to call in Daniel to talk about natural resource management. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Daniel Konye. I'm Senior Project Officer supporting implementation of livelihood. I'm based here in Isiolo for a USAID-funded program called USAID Nawiri. Nawiri is a program that tries to support counties to be able to address the underlying causes of malnutrition within the 4 counties, that is in Isiolo, Marsabit, Turkana, and Samburu. And as a program, we understand that natural resource management plays a critical role in terms of ensuring that our communities are food secure, and they can be able to sustainably be able to manage their resources. To that effect, we have been able to undertake some researches that really made us to understand that the natural resource management will and continue to provide a critical resource for us. So within this conversation, I'll just share briefly of our experience, most likely in 2 counties, that is in Isiolo and Marsabit, on how natural resource management can support us to be able to ensure that we have long-term, resilient, and equitable distribution of some of the benefits. Just to note that when we talk about natural resource management, for us within the 2 counties, we look at some of the resources that are available for communities. Just to underscore what majority of speakers have said, that the issue of land, water, our grazing resources, those are some of the key resources that we have for us to be able to sustainably maintain our livelihood. So we look at it in terms of, as a program, we look at it in terms of whether we have policies that have been in place to ensure that there is equitable access and management of some of those resources. Within the 2 counties, we have been able to support the 2 county governments to be able to develop natural resource management policies, to which I believe they are in different stages. And we hope that as we continue with this engagement, we will be able to ensure that by the end of the day, the policies are able to be enacted and support communities. We also appreciate that even at community levels, there is need for us to develop community institutions and bylaws that governs the issue of access to natural resource management. And to that effect, we have been able to work with different community level structures, just to mention the likes of grazing committees within the communities, which are low-level institutions that then develops bylaws that governs the issue of access to pasture and water at community. At ward level, we have been able to work with ward planning committees for us to be able to develop contingency plans that helps community to be able to support in terms of climate mitigation measures. At household level, I believe that's a conversation and a conversation that we have continued for us to be able to ensure that households are resilient and they are able to access some of those resources. And just to mention that within those conversations, we ensure that community participation is encouraged at different levels, just to ensure that communities are informed about the process. They also participate and they give their views, which are then incorporated within the whole conversation. We encourage local action through community conversation, where communities come together to be able to discuss their challenges. They come up with their own actions, and through that they are able to engage other partners, mobilize local resources, and through that they have been able to develop some local solutions. We also understand there are some community structures that also need to be supported. Just to mention the issue of water management committees, grazing management committees that we have been able to support in terms of capacity development and linkages with other actors, just to ensure that some of those plans that are developed by those community structures are actualized. We also understand that there is need for us to promote equitable access to community resources, and through that we encourage communities to be able to ensure that the underprivileged and underprivileged are engaged in the whole process during the formulation of some of those bylaws, the policies, and they're also engaged in terms of rollout of some of those recommendations. Just to ensure that some of those recommendations are in line with the climate resilient, the issue of ensuring that climate adaptation is incorporated within some of the conversation have been put in place, just ensuring that communities understand some of the underlying causes and structural cause of vulnerabilities that then exposes them to different disasters. So we believe that through enactment of some of those recommendations, our communities will be able to utilize resources effectively, and they will be able to share to really benefit from those engagements. So just also to highlight that in terms of implementation of some of those policies, we understand there are some limitations. One is that in terms of some of the resources that are shared within these counties, they cut across different counties. Just to mention the issue of River Wasonyiro, which then, if we have to implement a recommendation, we'll have to go for inter-counties engagement and inter-county discussion for us to be able to effectively manage some of those resources. We also understand that some of the resources, they are also shared by different counties, so the need for us to expand the conversation, to reach out to other counties, that will help us as a community to be able to effectively manage some of those resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. He's covered around issues of natural resources. I don't want really to waste a lot of time on this. I want to invite Gladys. She manages an umbrella organization in terms of an experience on how we can use our rangeland beneficially so that our land can be able to benefit us. Karibu sana, Gladys.
So good afternoon. Niko karibu kutoshana na hii podium, so you'll bear with me. So as Jaso has mentioned, thank you. So as Jaso has mentioned, I work for an organization called the Kenya Wildlife Conservancy Association, which is the umbrella body that brings together all the conservancies in Kenya. There was a mention about conservancies earlier and the interesting conversations that have been going on in the country level, at local level, so I'll be addressing a bit of it. Conservancies being part of the conservancy being part of the larger natural resource that we have as a country. And why we thought that we need to have this discussion is that, as we know, we're in the pastoral areas, and as a country, a majority of our wildlife is within the pastoral areas. And it said that about 60 or 70% of wildlife in Kenya is outside parks. It's on people's lands, community land, on private lands, and majority of it is actually not on community land, which has been a subject of discussion earlier. Na mnajua kwamba wildlife pia, just as the pastoralists and the livestock, there is no boundary. And it's also a resource that we have ignored over the years, a resource that we have considered as a menace over the years, but a resource that, as a country, you know how much wildlife contributes to the national economy through tourism. Mingi naenda through the hotel system and all that, but if a lot of the wildlife is within the parks, I mean outside the parks, within community lands, then it's an opportunity for us as a people, as a pastoral communities, to really see how we can benefit from the wildlife. Ndio pesa yote ikionekana ikienda kwa national government, at least even the communities, they can take charge of a bit of it. And I'll start with just looking at where we are as a country. And there was a presentation that was being projected. Just demonstrating how much we've lost as a country and why we should factor in matters wildlife conservation as a national agenda and as a matter of also national development and local development. So over the past 40 years, Kenya has significantly lost wildlife population, about 68%, and majority of the loss is occurring within the pastoral areas, with studies showing that up to about 90% in some counties, like West Pokot has lost about 90% of its wildlife, the likes of Turkana 90%, the likes of Kilifi 92%, the likes of Tana River 87%. And so it basically demonstrates how much loss we've had because of our practices, either because we have either gone into bushmeat, we have gone into poaching, and so we are experiencing heavy losses. And it's not just the wildlife loss. We need to attribute the wildlife loss to habitat degradation, to fragmentation, to the many conflicts we are experiencing even today because we've lost it. And so as a country, we need to rethink how do we do wildlife management. And so the Wildlife Act of 2013 recognizes wildlife conservancies, and it's the first time the conservancies were recognized, despite that there were efforts earlier on to do wildlife conservation on community and private lands. And so it recognizes that communities and private landowners who have wildlife can undertake wildlife conservation in their land as a beneficial land use. And most of the time, people don't see it as a beneficial land use. And so how do we develop it and make sure it's a beneficial land use? And so just go, ignore the dates, go up. You can go back to the previous slide. Yeah, this one. So this is just a presentation of where we are as a country in terms of our losses. And you can see we are not doing good at all, and especially in some counties. And we are not doing good as much as wildlife is a key resource for this country in terms of revenue generation. So how can we rethink that and going back to the same? I'll move on. And so the studies have shown just how much loss is happening. And the first map is showing years between 1990 to 99. The purple area, or where you're seeing a lot of dots, that's how much wildlife intensity we had across the country. And when you look at the pastoral areas, you can see there is significance of wildlife, and this is where majority of our wildlife has been. But when you come to the 2010s and the 2022s, you can see that the density is shrinking over the years, and in some areas it's significantly shrinking because of our land use practices and how we've shifted from even ecosystem approach to conservation. We move on. And so why conservancies? That has been the question, and what are conservancies? And so conservancies, as I've mentioned, have been an attempt to really reverse what we have lost as a country. And these are initiatives that have happened on community and private lands. It is not a new attempt. It is not a new phenomena. Conservancy are about 30 years old. But within the last 10 years after the 2010 Constitution that recognizes the need to embrace community engagement in matters conservation, we've seen a significant increase of conservancies coming up, but also the demonstration of the benefits that the communities are giving to the country, to the local community. But also noting that as a country, we pride ourselves, as it was earlier said, we don't just pride ourselves in marathon and all that. We pride ourselves in being a very rich, biodiverse country, but we are very fast losing it if we don't rethink our ways. We move on. And so we've seen a trend of growth of community conservancies and also on private lands as well. And you can see the significant increase happens around from the 2000, 2008, 2012, and then up after the 2013 Act of Wildlife in 2013. And it has been attributed to different things. Wildlife, number one, being recognized as an important resource. Number two, government recognizing wildlife conservancies within the Act and even empowering communities to establish conservancies. But also now the bigger initiatives on how to support the same and also benefits being seen to trickle down to the communities. And so we move on. As a network, we were established in 2013, and it was actually an effort that was led by the Kenya Wildlife Service because they realized that the majukumu they have within the parks and their maybe limited capacity as a government cannot really address the issues outside parks, the human-wildlife conflict, the issues of benefit. And so the idea was, can we encourage conservancy's growth? And that can only happen if we have collective action by the conservancies. And so that's why the birth of the network. The network as an umbrella body, we have a membership of actually, right now it's over 200. We work through landscape approach, through the landscape associations, which are spread in 29 counties, and the landscape associations are 12 of them across the country. Let's proceed. And this is just a pictorial, just demonstration how vast the conservancies are distributed across the country. And you can see where majority of them are actually occurring within the pastoral areas. But there are still some areas and some parts of the pastoral areas that have been left out, despite, you remember the map that had a lot of purple areas. They're still biodiverse, there's still potential, but wildlife has not been adopted as a tool for local development or even for conservation. And the likes of the northeastern, Wajir, Mandera, Garissa, we are seeing efforts slowly coming up, but they require a lot of support, a lot of efforts, and more so because the land structure has been the former trust lands. The structure was such that the governance was still not unclear, and so the issue of what Amos was talking about, community land registration, is one among the priorities that we need to look into if we have to have wildlife conservation in some parts of the pastoral areas being recognized as a key avenue or a key resource area. And how conservancies benefit, please proceed. This is just a highlight of the benefits. And majority of the conservancies that have advanced and developed, the likes of those in the Masai Mara region, some of them even in Samburu area, they have a number of tourism facilities. Earlier on, there was a mention about the component on tourism within the conservancies. So within the conservancies across the country, we have about 217 tourism facilities, and most of them are employing local people, like the local communities. Some of them are through investment structures, whereby the communities give investors, the communities some lease fees, they give them bed night fees and all that. But I know it's also a big discussion because of how it has been done over the years in an inequitable model. We are seeing conservancies benefiting directly at a household level. We are seeing employment through conservancy rangers. We are seeing also conservancy hosting even most of our critical wildlife species, including the likes of the gravy, the hirola, but also that the fact that if we have to achieve what as a country we are trying to seek to achieve as improving our environment, we have the targets of the 15 billion trees. That can only have, the 15 billion trees mostly will happen in the highlands. What about these other areas? We need to rethink about our land practices, our land use practices, and how we also integrate pastoralism with wildlife conservation. And so conservancy as a land use, but also as an institution. Please proceed. is beyond, it's not just wildlife, it's looking holistically at how do we integrate social development, environmental development, but also economic development, and it blends in all that together. And in the interest of time, I will just highlight some of the challenges that have been experienced in terms of conservancies. The first one I did mention was the matters community land registration. We've realized that tenure rights are quite critical and community land governance when it comes to natural resource governance. And so we need to really enhance or really advocate that our lands, community lands, are registered so that the communities can really enable, they can be the forefronters of deciding how their conservancies run, how they are structured, where they occur. The other one is that wildlife, basically as a national function, majority of our budgets are targeted from national government treasury, are targeted to national parks. Actually, even national reserves is a very minimal proportion. And so if majority of our wildlife is outside parks, then we really need to see that government is also allocating money outside parks beyond addressing human-wildlife conflict, which you also know that it's also a concern within the country. How do we improve that, even the infrastructure within the community? Because wildlife conservation is not a cheap affair. It's an expensive affair because, of course, the issue of diseases, the issue of compensation, the issues of even maybe you don't even do agriculture and all that. How can we see that the government creates that kind of infrastructure? The other area is matters inequitable benefit sharing is a concern that we have seen over the years. And the conservancy model has evolved over the years. We know ile maneno tunasemanga ya community-based conservation has been driven by others, and now how do we move from community-based to community-led, being the communities being the decision makers, determining, even negotiating for proper benefits, enhancing our capacities so that we can participate in the same. And Shibia will be talking about, for instance, carbon. Carbon is happening in conservancies. And one of the things that the government has done is provide benefit sharing framework that can enhance equity. And so how can the same happen, that we promote good governance such that communities are also benefiting? There are also misperceptions and a lot of misinformation across about conservancies, from the political arena to the local politics. This also damages because sometimes local politics drives the narrative on the ground. And we would encourage that really that we, even within political arena, we get to understand this concept better, so that when you're also helping our communities, they also understand it from a proper perspective. But also county governments. We've seen a number of county governments realizing the benefits of conservancies. Samburu County, for instance, has been allocating, has an act on conservancies, as an act that provides for a fund for annual budget allocation for conservancies. They allocate 200 million per year to the conservancies because they see it as a tool for local development, for social cohesion, for conservation. The same, Narok is developing a legislation. Kajiado is also moving towards the same. And so, and when the county governments come into place, then they are able also to manage the issues on the ground, the local politics, but also enhance good governance across the area. So it's an encouragement that our counties also embrace matters conservancies and also promote that the conservancies are developed. I think I've exhausted my 10 minutes. Okay, so I think that's it, and we'd love to engage more about this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gladys. I know the issue of conservancy is sometimes very contagious. There's a lot of contest around whether we can use our land for this purpose or that purpose, whether it is compatible with pastoralism. I know there's a lot of argument. So I think I want Shibia to follow this. Dida will close that, so that we can see one way of how we have used our land. And as I said in the introduction, Shibia manages one of the world's biggest soil carbon projects. Not in Africa, but in the world. It is the biggest one in the world, and it's in northern Kenya. So, and it's been in the news for many times. Sometimes very good reports, sometimes very negative report, and there's really little understanding. So I think I want you to focus on helping people understand what is this carbon. I remember when I went to Kenya, watu waliniuliza, mnauza hewa yetu. So basically, can you clarify this point, Asante?
Waheshimiwa tuko nayo hapa, wazee, vijana, kina mama, hamjambo? Wazee hamjambo? Sisikii bado huko mwisho, hamjambo? Naam, nashukuru sana kwa hiyo sauti yenu. Kwa majina naitwa Mohamed Shibia. Ndugu yangu hapa Jars amenielezea zaidi. Mimi hii ni project moja kubwa sana ya soil carbon removal project, nitaelezea zaidi. Pia natarajia small presentation, nitajaribu kufanya haraka. Sawa, asante. Nilikuwa natafuta screen yangu iko wapi, lakini nimeonyesha iko hapa chini. Sasa tunataka wafugaji wote wauze carbon credits. Sisi hatuuzi hewa, lakini nitawaelezea. Sote tunataka tuuze credits. Hizo credits ni mapato tutapata juu ya pastoralism, ile ufugaji bora tunafanya kama tuko na tourism. Ile njia yote ile tunajimudu, ile additional, hiyo credits nitawaelezea. Kwa hivyo vipi tutawasaidiana kila mtu apate hii pesa, nitaelezea zaidi. Nafasi ya kwanza nichukue nielezee maana ya carbon ni nini kwanza, number 1. Second, hiyo ndio jina ya project, Northern Kenya Rangeland Carbon Project. Iko na wahusika watatu. Moja kwanza ni NRT, Northern Rangeland Trust. Katika lugha ya hii miradi NRT ni proponent. Proponent aliye propose the project number 1 na mwenye atakuwa responsible hiyo project kufaa katika ile maisha yake. Hii project iko na maisha ya miaka 30. Ya pili, tuko na kampuni inaitwa Native. Hii kampuni inashughulikia mambo ya mauzo. Yes, sijaendelea kwanza. I just wanted to explain the stakeholders that are there. So wanashirikiana katika hiyo mauzo. Alafu community members ndio participating conservancies. Kwa hivyo ni washikadau watatu. Next. Anayepeleka kwa wapi? Ndio nimwambie next. Asante. Basi vile nilikuwa nimesema, hii ni project kubwa. Imeandikwa kwa Kiingereza, lakini kwa sababu mnajili ya wazee tajaribu kuongea kwa Kiswahili. Wale wanaweza jisomea wanaweza endelea. Kwa hivyo tukisema carbon ni aina ya hewa chafu, hewa mbaya. Sote tunajua inaitwa mabadiliko ya tabia nchi, climate change, mabadiliko ya mvua, ujoto kuongezeka. Hiyo hewa chafu ikiongezeka katika sehemu ya angani ndio inaongeza ujoto. Ikiwa pale ni mbaya kwa maisha yetu, mbaya kwa mazingira yetu, na mbaya zaidi katika ile njia tunajimudu kama ile ufugaji. Carbon ikiwa katika sehemu nyingine tofauti kama kwa mchanga, kwa hii project nitaelezea zaidi, kama ile ya misitu ya forest ama kule baharini pia inawezekana. Hii yote ni tunasema nature based solution, ile njia kupitia ardhi na land, ndio nitaelezea zaidi. Kwa hivyo kuna njia tofauti na land. Hata hii stima tunaona energy saving, ile majiko mnaona, hata hiyo ni njia nyingine, lakini mimi nitazingatia ile inahusu wafugaji zaidi na ni muhimu kwetu. Kwa hivyo njia yoyote ile inatusaidia kuweka carbon katika mchanga, forest, vile nimeelezea, utapata nafasi tunasema incentivize. Hiyo ndio unaongezewa kama zawadi, ndio uendelee kufanya kazi mzuri zaidi na zaidi. Hapo ndio unapata credit. Ukiongea zaidi kwa simu unapata bonga points. Hapa ukipanga mpango za malisho vizuri, basi utapata credit hiyo ya soil carbon removal project. Hapo ndio sasa tunauza hizo credits. Kuna njia ya kufanya hiyo hesabu, na naona hapa kuna wazee wengi, akina mama wengi wenye wanashughulikia hii kazi kule sehemu ya nyumbani. Kwa hivyo hiyo ndio kitu tunauza. Hatu kimbizani na hewa kushika, lakini kuna vile science imefanyika na kuelezea ni ngapi ya hiyo hewa iko kwa mchanga. Basi turudi kwa presentation. So hii yote nimeelezea. Kama ukiwa na mpango mzuri ya malisho, hasa hii miradi kusaidiana na communities, wanashirikiana na kuboresha hiyo malisho. Nyasi ni bora, utaipata, ni kama maisha kama kawaida. Wanyama wetu wa pori inashughulikiwa, wanyama wetu ya nyumbani inashughulikiwa. Hakuna mtu anatolewa katika sehemu yake. Hii ni mpango ya community na hiari yao. Wakifanya zaidi ni performance, na wadungia credit. Wakifanya mbofu inapunguka. Kuna hesabu aina mingi inafanyika, wenye katika hiyo sehemu wanaweza jua zaidi. Next slide. Sehemu inashika hii project ni kama ni sehemu ya Chari Ward, Ngaremara hapa Isiolo, alafu Burat, Oldonyiro. Pande wa Laikipia ni Mkogodo East West, alafu nimetaja Oldonyiro, alafu inashikilia upande wa Samburu East paka Wamba, tunasema Meibai, alafu Waso Ward. Nashikilia hiyo sehemu ya historia ya wafugaji hapa. Kwa hivyo kwa hektari ni 1.9 million. Next. Niliweza kusema miaka ya hii project, miaka 30. Katika ile hesabu tumeweza, ama matarajio ni ya kwamba kupitia hii project tunaweza weka zaidi ya milioni 50 hiyo tani ya hiyo hewa mbaya. Wakati ya saa hii kwa hesabu tawaelezea zaidi, bado tukiwa tunaelekea, tuko karibu 6.7 million. So tunaelekea vizuri, na hiyo ni miaka yake ya kwanza 6. Bado zaidi tunapiga hesabu. Next. Hii ni chanzo wafugaji wako nayo. Vile nilisema, orodha ya ile mipango imefanyika ni ile inafaa wafugaji. Hii ni number 1 ya wafugaji. Tukigonga hii tuvunje kama glasi ya maji, ni hivyo. Lakini hii mbinu zake, njia zake zinafuatilia zile mpango za wafugaji. Kwa hivyo tukisema Samfast inamaanisha haijatenga ufugaji, inaboresha ufugaji, kuleta wafugaji pamoja, kupanga malisho yao. Wafugaji wanapanganga malisho yao, lakini wakati ya saa hii wanazingatia namna ya kuboresha malisho. Next. Hii nimeelezea shughuli zake, naanzia mambo ya mpango ya malisho. Next. Hii pia nimewaelezea, inaitwa theory of change. Yote inaanzia katika ile mpango ya malisho ya pamoja, inaanzia kwa Manyata. Kutoka Manyata inashikana katika ile vijiji, katika ile conservancies tunasema zones. Mara zingine zones inakuwa kama sub locations. Kutoka pale sasa inaelekea kuwa katika ile sehemu ya conservancies. Conservancies zingine ni ward mzima, zingine inaweza kuwa sehemu tofauti chache katika ward. Alafu kutoka pale sasa hali hapa ni kuongeza malisho, nyasi. Imagine wafugaji hapa unaongeza malisho juu ya mfuko yako, lakini juu ya hiyo, juu unafanya kazi mzuri, unapata zawadi zaidi. Hiyo ndio credit. Next. Na ndio inauzika katika soko ya Ulaya. Katika mwaka yake long term, nimeweza kuelezea saa hii sio miaka 10, lakini miaka 12 ndio tumesimama, na itapeana nafasi hizi mambo za conservancies, community lands zote kuendelea mbele. Next. Hii project imekuwa na nafasi kubwa hii duniani. Tunaita VCS, Verified Carbon Standard. Hiyo ni Vera standard. Ile standard imepewa ni ya hali ya juu kwa sababu ya kushughulikia mambo tofauti. Muhula mwaka ya kwanza hiyo ndio mali nilikuwa nimepata 6.7 million. VER hiyo ni Verified Emission Reduction. Ni ile carbon imeweza kuweka katika zile mchanga. So pesa za ya mwaka ya 2013-2016 tunajua tumepata, community wamepata, hesabu zake kidogo nitapitia. Alafu hatujajua pesa ya 2017-2020 lakini mauzo inaendelea. Next. Right, katika ile mpango ya mgao ya pesa niliweza kutaja partners watatu: communities, NRT na native. So mgao ya kwanza ni 40-60, 40 broker akichukua, 60 kibaki na community. Sasa sisi katika ile 60 NRT haichukui pesa. Ile pesa tuko nayo, tuko na kamati inaitwa Carbon Project Oversight kuendeleza hii kazi, kusaidia mambo ya masomo na mambo kama hayo. Kwa hivyo na kusupport pia ile staff wanasaidiana pale. Hiyo kwa jumla pesa tunatumia ni $300,000. Pesa zile zingine zote ni kuelekea upande wa conservancies. Hizo wodi ni kama 9 nimeweza kutaja, iko na idadi watu karibu 200,000 hapo. Waliweza kupata hizo pesa 14.6 billion. Kuna njia wameweza kuhifadhi hapa na pale, lakini pesa ya Kenya 1.8 billion imeingia kwa mikono yao direct. Wakati ya sai, muhula yake miaka 3 ya kwanza. Next, hiyo ni picha kuonyesha tu mabasaries. Hiyo ni mgao ikifika kwa conservancies. Conservancies wakasikizana tu, wakaona kwa hali tofauti wapeane county government 5%. Ile inabaki wanaweka 60% kushughulikia community development, 40% kushughulikia mambo za conservancies, kwa sababu vile nilisema hii ni performance, lazima mtu afanye kazi. Next. Hii ni kushughulikia tu ile line nimewaelezea. Next. Hii already nimewaelezea, ni hiyo mpango tu, inaanzia kutoka malisho hadi tunapata hiyo credit na tunapeleka soko. Next. Hii ni sehemu kubwa kuonyesha tu, hii ni sehemu mnajua kwa muda mrefu, miaka mirefu overgrazing ilikuwa ina happen, kuna sehemu iko na nyasi mingi, sehemu mingi wazee wanajua zamani kulikuwa na nyasi, sasa hii hakuna, aidha ni miti, mamiche, lakini mara nyingi tunasema background hakuna nyasi, hakuna mamiti. Kwa hivyo inajaribu kurudisha nyasi mahala pale zimepotea. Next. Na next na inashughulikia hii sehemu nimetaja hiyo 9 wards, kuna wanyama aina nyingi na inashughulikia hiyo mambo yote. Haishughulikii wanyama directly hivyo, lakini ile nyasi wafugaji wanaelekeza, wanapeana direction, wanyama pia wana benefit, wanasaidika. Next. Hii ni community engagement, hii ni community owned project, wenye wako hapa wanajua, wenye wale wengine mkipata nafasi mnaweza ongea na wao. Next. Keep going. Asante. Hii ni sehemu yetu katika ile pesa ya community development, mambo ya all the SDG ni sustainable development goals, yote ziko hapo. Na katika miaka ya juzi tu 2022 hii project ilipata nafasi kutajiwa katika ile COP27 na ikapata award nyingine, ile inaitwa Natural Climate Solution Alliance. Next. Accreditation nyingine juu nimeongea mambo ya climate change, kupunguza hiyo hewa, mambo ya community development nimeweza kutaja, na mambo ya wanyama biodiversity inahesabiwa kutoka mpaka kipepeo ama vipepeo, ile butterflies, birds, inahesabiwa mambo nyingi sana. Next. Na ni project aina moja dunia mzima kati ya 21 ile tuko nayo, na inatambulika na rais yetu pia. Next. Basi I think hapo ndio nitasimamia. Chenye nilikuwa zaidi nataka kusema ni ya kwamba vile nilianza nikasema tungependa kila mtu auze credit. Iko na manufaa, mapato. Sisi wenye already tuko katika hii project tumeweza kujua. Nafasi ya kwanza kabisa ni mambo ya governance, land governance. Ni conservancy, lakini katika ile sheria ya kwanza tuko nayo inatambulika zaidi ni community land committees. Tunasema land right, community, carbon rights. So wakati hii njia sio lazima mambo ya land community land registration, lakini katika ile si tunasema free prior informed consent, ile community kupokea, kuchukua na kusema muendelee, ni muhimu mtu kuwa na hiyo community land tenor. So that is why it is important. Hiyo ni moja. Nyingine ni katika hii sheria ya saa hii CLMC peke yake inatambulika, lakini najua sisi hapa sote tunaelewa wafugaji tuko na njia tofauti. Ile indigenous governance haitambuliki hiyo, wakati ya saa hii mwelekeo ni only CLMCs. So to focus hivyo. Ya mwisho ni inahitaji tu kidogo coordination, kwa sababu kama pande wa Kenya, pande ile nyingine tuko na kofi, majani, juu ya wale wanyama wetu wa nyumbani na wapori tuko nayo. Hii ndio miradi yetu moja saa hata serikali naona tuna export credit. Kwa hivyo inahitajika sasa sisi wafugaji wote pamoja na leaders wetu tujue hii ni njia moja mzuri, kwa sababu kuna political will ya serikali, rais ako na sisi. Ni wakati sisi tufikirie tuone vile tuta commercialize our pastoralism. Thank you. Nimechukua masaa mengi.
Asante sana Shibia. Nafikiri tunaendelea kuelewa yetu tunaweza tumia kwa njia nyingi. Kwa ufugaji vile kawaida tunafanya, Gladys alituambia tunaweza tumia na pia kupata rasilimali kutokana na protection ya wildlife. Shibia ametuambia mambo ya carbon credits, ambaye wako na project ya mwaka 30 ambayo na asilimia milioni 2 ya hekta ambayo watatoa carbon kupitia soil na kutengeneza mambo ya nyasi, na inakuwa estimate ya about, wanatoa emission ya estimate ya about 10 million cars, na community wanapata credit. So swali moja muhimu ambaye kila wakati tunasikia ni kwa hii mambo ya community conservancy ni njia ya kuiba community land, ni njia ya kutoa community livestock off the land. Nataka kumuita Dida atufafanulie kama kweli wana mipango ya siri ya kutoa sisi kwa ardhi yetu, na ndio tukasema mpaka turegister land hii maneno tuna wasiwasi naye. Nataka atueleze, anda tufungie hapo ndio niweze kufungua, ndio tuulize maswali. Asante.
Asante sana mzee Jarso. Wazee, kina mama, vijana, hamjambo tena? Habari ya saa 8? Umechoka? Are you listening? I'm sure we are expecting a barrage of questions. Shibia, sijui kama umejitayarisha. Sawa. So kwa majina mimi naitwa Dida Fayo. I'm the regional director for NRT East Region, ambaye ina cover region hii yetu ya Isiolo mpaka Marsabit, ambayo is the biggest region in NRT coverage, and NRT ndio arguably the biggest in the Kenya Wildlife Conservancy Association fraternity. Tukua out of zile 99 community conservancies ziko katika membership ya Kenya Wildlife Conservancy Association, ambazo Gladys ametaja hapa. 45 of them are in NRT membership, so that makes it actually about more than a half iko katika membership ya NRT. So siko hapa kuzungumza mambo ya NRT. NRT is not on the agenda. The agenda here is issues of land registration, but I want to connect the story on how everything we are discussing here will come back to land registration, and how in the long run, by registering our land, our community land, tutaweza kuwa na ile sustainable success and prosperity sisi kama ASAL communities. Remember, we are here today because we are looking at policy bottlenecks and policy practice gaps as the people of Northern Kenya, looking at what is of essence for us as a society, both from our historical review as well as kuangalia miaka yale ambayo yako mbele yetu. So just as an overview is that when we talk about carbon credits, and I'm really happy with the good presentation Shibia has done, leading the biggest soil carbon project in the whole world. And you know, the vile alieleza kuna soil carbon, which is rangelands carbon. There is red plus carbon, ambayo ni ya maeneo ya misitu. Na pia kuna ile inaitwa blue carbon, ambayo ni ya sehemu za wapi? Wacha nione kama watu wako hapa. Yeah, blue carbon ambayo ni sehemu za baharini. Na katika hizo soil carbon projects, ama rangelands rangeland carbon projects, hii ambayo inakuwa championed, ambayo inaitwa the Northern Kenya Rangelands Carbon Project, is the biggest in the whole world. Na you can imagine, iko na dream kubwa ya kuweza ku sequester, you know, a huge amount and volume of credits over time. So tukirudi kwa hii point, for that to happen, for that carbon sequestration to happen, from which we are going to earn carbon revenues, and us as a people to be able to conserve our resources, natural resources. Natural resources haipatikani angani, wala haipatikani huko, you know, hata wale wanaenda Mars na wanaenda Jupiter, and all these, you know, NASA things. All those natural resources are found here on Earth and here on our land. And this is why at the center of this discussion, kama kuna agenda muhimu zaidi, is how to register our land. Not only how to register our land, because Mzee Jarso is here and I can see my brother Amos is here, but how to register our community land in ways that befit the pastoralist lifestyle, in ways that synchronize, ambayo inaambatana na maisha na ama system yetu ya sisi wafugaji. Kama NRT, na ndio swali ambayo Mzee Jarso ameuliza. NRT ilianzishwa mwaka wa 2004. Nataka tu kudhibitisha hiyo sehemu ya kusema kuchukua ardhi yetu, ndio tutoke hapo tuendelee kwa back to the key point of the day. NRT was started in the year 2004 by two community conservancies kukuja pamoja, ambayo ni Ilingwesi na Namunyak. Na Ilingwesi Conservancy ambayo iko upande wa Laikipia ni conservancy ambayo ilianzishwa 27 years ago. Today, siku ya leo, imefika miaka 27. Na Namunyak iko upande wa hii area ya Wamba. Na leo NRT inasherehekea miaka 20 baada ya kuanzishwa. Na hizo miaka zote, in my region ambayo naongoza, niko na 16 conservancies, 4 ambazo ziko Marsabit, 4 ziko upande wa Oldonyiro, 4 hapa Isiolo Central, na 4 upande wa Isiolo South. And all the oldest out of all those is Melako Community Conservancy, ambayo nimesikia mzee kutoka Laisamis. Na hiyo ni it is the same age na NRT, ilianzishwa mwaka wa 2004. Na ni moja wapo ya zile conservancies ambazo zinafaidika na mradi ya carbon, na hapo saa hizi wanaendelea katika ile hatua ya gazettement ya community land registration, na hizo hatua zinaendelea vizuri. So kwa ufupi tu ni kusema kwamba hakuna ardhi ambayo tunachukua. On the contrary, we actually support the dream of land registration, and I will explain in 3 key points. After that nitapeana a few of the asks ambazo tunapaswa kuipeleka, kwa sababu one of the objective of this meeting today here is to develop the asks which are going to be presented at the PLS. Na kwa hivyo lazima hizo resolutions tukue nazo kwa uwazi. Lakini NRT ni mojawapo ya zile shirika ambazo zina champion jamii kuweza kusajili ardhi zao, tukisaidiana na shirika zingine kama kina MIDP, Pastoralist Women, you know, DLCI ikiongozwa na mzee wetu Jarso ikiwa katika mstari wa mbele, na mashirika mengine mengi katika Isiolo hii na maeneo mengi ya taifa la Kenya. So first of all, the first contribution ambayo NRC itafanya is to give financial facilitation, kwa sababu maswali mengi yaliibuka jana na tukakuja kujua kwamba mojawapo ya shida nyingi ambazo tuko nazo katika Northern Kenya, even apart from, you know, all these issues that we're talking about, our economic issues, our livestock economy itself is going to be repaired and made better if our land is registered. Kwa sababu tutaweza ku manage ardhi zetu katika na mifugo yetu katika within our landscapes. So the financial facilitation role. The second one is a policy redesign. NRT is going to undertake a policy redesign once all these lands are registered. What does that mean? Saizi vile ambavyo tunaongea, the structure of community conservancies, and vile my sister mentioned, is that community conservancies were started in Kenya under the Wildlife Management Act of 2013. That is the legislation that gave power to the indigenous communities, ambayo ni mimi na wewe, kuweza kuanzisha conservancies katika maeneo yao. And for that to have happened is of course guided by the data that says 70% or 60% of all wildlife are found in community areas. So wakati jamii walikuja pamoja kuanzisha conservancies za kijamii, wanafanya ile inaitwa governance structure yao, ambayo wanachagua viongozi ndani yao katika kila kijiji. For example, if you are talking about Garbatula Conservancy, or you're talking about maybe Biliko Bulesa Conservancy. Biliko Bulesa Conservancy iko na vijiji ndani yake, iko na Warsitu, iko na Goda, iko na Biliko, iko na Bulesa itself. All those villages, all those, I don't know what they call them, but kila kijiji inatoa kwa mfano watu wawili, and that is what becomes the conservancy board. Na hiyo board ama kamati ya conservancy ndio ambayo inakupeana muongozo ama strategy and leadership katika hizo conservancies. Na tukaenda hatua tukaongeza hata viongozi wa serikali katika hizo conservancies. That is why we have mandatory ex-officio members in the leadership of those conservancies. Kwa mfano ward admin wa hiyo area is an ex-officio member, mandatory. The area chiefs are mandatory ex-officio members. The office of the MCA is mandatorily represented, na viongozi wengine wa tabaka mbalimbali ya serikali. So when we are doing a policy redesign to welcome community land registration, what we are saying is a day and time will come when all these community conservancies, and just to give you an advantage, majority of NRT membership conservancies are registered as wards. Kwa sababu ward system ilikuja baada ya devolution. Si ni kweli? So vile zilikuja baada ya devolution, tuliweza kuzitransition na kufit into the ward system, so that the ward system is going to fit into the county government resource, distribution structure. So that ward system is going to enable us to have a working model where tutafanya kama land registration imefanyika ward based, and I think that is what is happening largely in Isiolo County. If the land registration is happening ward based, if community land registration is happening, along the jurisdiction of the wards, if conservancies exist along the jurisdiction of the wards, if ward level climate change committees are happening at the ward level, and community land management committees happen at the ward level, then that means this is a structure we can only redesign our policy and have a harmonized way forward. Ndio tuweze kuweza kuachieve ile ambayo inaitwa wildlife conservation. Kwa sababu climate change is a real issue. We have to conserve our nature, we have to conserve our wildlife. Na sisi kama wafugaji, kwa sababu someone may ask, and I think I just felt that in my heart wakati nimekaa pale nikienda kumalizia, someone may ask, why are we talking about wildlife when we here to talk about National Pastoralists Conference? And the answer is very simple. We are talking about our natural resources. This is why Masai Mara, people come from all over the world to come to Masai Mara, and apparently recently they even added the prices of, the premium and the costs of enjoying those resources for tourists. The reason is this becomes the top revenue earner for our counties, for our communities. That is going to be the source of on-source revenue. We are looking at the carbon credits. Okay? Hiyo ndio itakuwa njia moja kuleta mapato. You have had 14 billion shillings already gone into the hands of 1 billion shilling, 1.4 billion already has been disbursed so far mali tumefika tangu hiyo project ya carbon ianzishwe. So this is real-time revenue for our people. It's real-time finances for our people. It's what is going to sit within the conference of parties, as has been mentioned by my brother. So that policy redesign is going to help us to be fit and to connect between wildlife community conservancies, which are anchored in the law under the Wildlife Management Act, side by side with the CLMCs, which are captured in the Community Land Act of 2016, and the wildlife and the ward level climate change committees, which are anchored in the Climate Change Act of 2019 and all those years. Lastly, NRT is going to play a convener role, kuleta stakeholders pamoja na kuweza kushirikisha hiyo katika kazi zetu. Coming to the asks as I finish, because najua tumeongea mengi na najua mko na maswali ya kuuliza. Number one is Northern Kenya requires, and before I say this, during the COVID-19 period, ambayo nyinyi wote najua mnakumbuka, and all this work that, just as my sister mentioned, is dependent purely on donor funding. Tunategemea ufadhili kuweza kusukuma hizi kazi za kuchunga mazingira na kuchunga pia wanyamapori. During the COVID-19 season, we went through a session where the donor funding was, it trimmed, it went down, and we had to write to the national government, and the national government supported our community conservancies for a whole year. Right now, one of the asks is how can we develop a sessional paper to be able to, compel the national government to support community conservancies as indigenous institutions which champion climate change mitigation and wildlife conservation. Mojawapo ni hizo. Number 2 is, sijui kama kinashibia walitaja hii, lakini we need a policy review around the carbon regulations of 2024. There's the Carbon Regulation 2024, and there's the Climate Change Act of 2024, which incorporates components of carbon regulations on how these things are going to befit indigenous communities. Because as at the moment, wameweka kwamba hii ardhi yote ya wafugaji watapata 40% ya yale mapato. And that is in the law of this country. But if these regulations are reviewed at the national government level, this can only be championed by political leaders, then we can champion for close to 60 to 70% of that carbon revenue to go straight to communities. And the remaining, maybe, to government and whatever, depending on how that legislation is going to be defined. The other issue that, of course, is going to sit on funding is this time now to compel our county governments and our governors and just as my sister has mentioned, is how can county governments follow the example of Samburu County? Samburu County has taken it upon itself to champion the cause of community conservation, and they have passed what they call the Samburu County Conservancies Fund Act of 2019. As at last year, they were able to disburse 150 million shillings to all the community conservancies within their landscape. And these conservancies, in return, reap carbon revenue, they reap tourism revenue. Kalama Conservancy here, along the highway, makes an annual revenue of 19 million shillings from tourism alone. Makes carbon credit revenue of 42 million shillings from tourism in 1 year. That is one conservancy, okay? Covering, like I've seen, a small area in the map. And this model befits perfectly within our grazing patterns, within our rangelands management, and of course within our pastoral systems. So how can county governments come in and legislate and support this? That's another ask that we need to put across. The other issue that we need to put across is to governors, Bwana Jarso. There is this Climate Change Act, though it was amended in 2024, the original act which came out in 2019, because when the national government passed that act, the county governments were supposed to domesticate them at the assembly level. So the Climate Change Act of 2019, is it 2019 or 2020? I need to be sure of that. 2016? So it envisioned that 2% of the entire county, 2% of all national or of the county government development budget should mandatorily be invested and injected into climate mitigation projects. This is the law of this country. It compels the county government of Isiolo, the county government of Marsabit, to mandatorily allocate 2% of their development budget iende katika miradi ya kutunza mazingira. And here we are talking about natural resource management, climate change mitigation, and all the disaster issues that we are talking about and that we need to really. So since devolution started, that is in 2013, up to date, we are 11 years in devolution now. I'm yet to see one county that has fully complied with that is within the ASALs. Is that a valid ask? The other one, just the legislation. And then, of course, we have mentioned on the misconception on land issues. I think by now, nobody can say our land is being taken. That's just a misrepresentation. Of course, the other important ask is fast tracking of community land registration, and this goes to the national government, but in ways that befit the pastoral systems. We don't want pastoralists to say that this is our land, and we have a land management committee for it, and we have a community conservancy, but this does not fit our model. I mean, we have to really define ourselves. We champion 100% pastoral systems which work in tandem with wildlife, which we have lived with for thousands upon thousands of years. Lastly, I feel like they are duplicating laws, and this I think is important that it goes on record. They are duplicating laws. There is the world level climate change committees, which I mentioned, which sits in the Climate Change Act of 2016, as you mentioned, which of course drags in the whole story of FLOCA and all that. And then there is the Community Conservancies Act there is the Wildlife Management Act of 2013, which talks about community conservancies. So how can we have, and all these guys are talking about wildlife conservation, climate change mitigation, environmental conservation. How can we have a singular legislation that brings everyone on the table? We are one people, one society, one community. If it is this ward is the same people sitting in this committee, sitting in the other committee, this one receiving funding from county, another one receiving funding from donors, working from this. How can we then, harmonize this structure so that we have singular CLMCs championing the same dream with a singular legislation working in national county government, money coming from carbon credits? We have clear modalities of benefit sharing and impact across the board, and see how we can achieve the bigger dream of our regional development. As I finalize, NRT has a 2050 vision for Northern Kenya, and this is what I'm going to close with, and it's three things. One is education, continuous education for 12 years for every child of this region. That means in the old model, class 1 to Form 4. 12 years is up to Form 4, Sindio? So from tertiary, maybe, other model. So that is one. That is the first vision that NRT has. And to champion this, NRT looks forward to establish 5 what we call centers of excellence, schools that are at the scale of Starehe Boys or Alliance, 5 of them established across the landscape of the ASAL counties, where Starehe Boys system is established, 5 of them across our region, and we have world-class institutions. That is one, in education. Number 2, NRT wants to communities to be able to attain what we call life expectancy up to the age of 75. Right now, insecurity, lack of access to clean water, lack of access to quality health care, all these things are limiting the life expectancy of our people. I don't know if our life expectancy has reached 50 or even 55, but it's subject to definitions. That's the second one. Then the third one is, you've stood up and I forgot my point. The third one is empowerment for communities. Every household to be able to earn 2,000 USD, that's about 270,000 shillings per annum. So that is economic empowerment, poverty alleviation. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Dida. Thank you. I think I want to open it up now, but 2 points I want to make. I think if you look at all this presentation which have been done, and yesterday I made a comment about the fact that pastoralists are not poor. And it appears like if you look at pastoralism, conservation, conservancy income, carbon credit, tourism, Pengine compensation fund from government projects that are going to use our land, investor, our CLMCs are going to be a very rich institutions. All we need to do is to organize ourselves, really, to bring all these things together. One point I want to really emphasize is that land is not going to register itself. There's a myth out there that government is going to help us register our land. There's nothing like that. We have to do it ourselves. Government is there for us if we want to make use of them. They are there. Amos is always there. If we call on him, he will be able to provide us service. I think one of the things we need to do is, can we wake up and secure our land? There's a lot of resources here. We are really endowed. It's a very rich place. It's only that we are disorganized and we are not really strategic. So I really want to open up these issues around land and natural resource and welcome questions, comments. Just like previous one, I want to encourage all of you to have only one question or one comment. Don't present like what others have done. So let's start here. I see the first hand, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seven. We stop there. Can we take you round 2 or we must go round 1? So mnaweza kumpatia nini? Let's start here. Please ask a direct question or a direct comment. Asante sana. And then you need to listen because you need to respond to those questions. Asante.
Thank you very much. My question goes about the same, that you are talking about the land. And I want to give a small and say I participated in that National Wildlife Conservation and Management Act together with our Honorable Chachu in the 11th Parliament. And some of the things that we wanted to address is to be able to separate what is the most ideal large tenure system for this place or for the pastoralists. And I want to put this question now to the officer from the LAD's office. When we talk about marginalization and the presentations we had in the morning, the biggest question is coming on how can we make the pastoral community participate in the national economic and social development of this country. One of the biggest challenges is access to funds, finances, like the way someone in Nyeri will take their title and get a loan to be able to restore back in case of like the losses we have for the animals. The kind of presentation we are having here, which is about communal, will not necessarily address that particular issue. What we need a hybrid in terms of we will have a large planning system that already gives individuals some parts of the land within the ASA regions individual ownership, and this can be in form of like what we have in Mwea. Areas that have got smaller plots, smaller areas that individuals have titles. And this is coupled now together with the community land, which goes for pastoralism activities, and again now what goes to the conservation kind of address. So is
Thank
that
you.
what you are working on, or you are working on something that does not address the wholesome issues that cut across board in terms of addressing the real issues for pastoralism?
Thank you. Thank you. Next.
Thank you very much. My name is Siad Moge. I work for Masuko. So I wanted to ask a question. He went out, but I think somebody will pick for him. It's not a question, but a comment on the issue of conservancies versus pastoralism. Initially, when he started, I thought he wanted to demystify some of my fears and fears of many of the pastoralists in regards to how should the conservancy support pastoralists in terms of livestock management. And the fear that I had has not been answered. You know, he was trying to compare Masai Mara and Masai community with this part of the pastoralists we have. We know what will happen in Masai Mara is more of national park and more control system. What we have here is a free range and a wildlife that also live with the community. And he tried to generate some information about how the community are benefiting from the short term in terms of revenue and in terms of other benefits. It's not coming out clearly, and I wanted to get some evidence on how the conservancies actually improve the wildlife, or I mean our livestock, in terms of becoming more resilient to drought that we are facing in the climatical challenges. How are the numbers increasing? There are areas that we have conservancies, so that we have more cattle, we have more camel, we have more goats and sheep. Those are the numbers I wanted to hear, so that the areas that now you are spreading, you want to tell them their umbusis have, you know, increased from these thousands to these thousands. The number of animals that died because of drought in the last drought long, you know, these are the numbers these are the information the pastor will want to listen. I want to speak like a pastoralist, not now as somebody who's working for an organization. And I think these are the information that will help us. And even the revenue that he has mentioned, the government is collecting or whoever is collecting. We already know we have a lot of, you know, suspicion on government money that's going to the government hand. How is it impacting the community in terms of development, a tangible development that impact on their life? Those are the things I wanted to hear.
I think very good question. That one next. That's excellent. I think Dida must respond to that. And all of you.
Okay.
Ya pili?
Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Abdul Karim Salesa. I'm Kulamawe Data Committee Chair. Data is customer institution that manage natural resources and rangelands. As a data, we have did our assessment, local assessment, and come up with a few key findings. Among them is inadequate policies or legal framework for rangeland management, declined range conditions and productivity due to the degradation and land fragmentation, poor regulation of access to rangeland resources due to the governance and governance institution, insecure land rights and tenor, inadequate research, extension, and human resource capacity to support the implementation of rangeland management, and finally, low investment in sustainable rangeland management. So my question is there any specific policy for rangeland governors has to tackle the highlighted challenges? And the second question, as we are all aware that DADAS is customer institution that manage natural resources and rangeland. And even the mandate of the conservancies. Conservancies are also there for the conservation. But we are experiencing a disconnect between the conservancies and local institutions like DADA and the World Planning Committee. So my question is, do you have any concrete strategy in place as to bond these important institutions, that is DADA, World Planning Committee, and conservancies, has to achieve sustainable rangeland management? Thank you.
Very good question. Excellent. Next, madam.
Jina langu ni Elizabeth Sini kutoka Kajiado County. Swali langu ni kupitia ofisi ya land. Wamesema kwamba wameandikisha kwa kila county na ametaja mpaka Kajiado County. Kajiado County nimetoka Kajiado South ambayo tuko na miaka 16 sasa tangu tupate district, na mpaka leo hatuna ofisi ya land pale. Na ni ukweli mlifanya registration, mmekata group ranch, lakini unakuta mtu anachukua pesa nyingi sana kwenda Kajiado County kutafuta tu search ya shamba peke yake. Na ofisi ya land ambayo tunajua kwamba mko na pesa, mbona mpaka leo hatujawahi kupata ofisi ya land katika Kajiado South? Ya pili, tuko na mashule ambayo ni ya serikali. Mpaka sasa hizo shule hawana titles, hawana chochote. Wakijaribu kwenda county kutafuta, anaambiwa ni ya ofisi ya land kutoka serikali kuu. So tunauliza swali, hawa ama hizi mashule na makanisa na msikiti ambayo mpaka saa hii wana hizo titles, atapata namna gani? Ya tatu, kabla county hatujapata county, tulikuwa na ministries agriculture, tuko na ministry wa barabara, ministry of work, na hizo ministry walikuwa na lands, iko hizo lands kubwa ziko tu. So hizo lands zimeachwa, hakuna mtu anaangalia, hajulikani iko kwa county, hajulikani kama iko kwa serikali kuu. So unakuta walanguzi wanaingia kukata zile shamba ambayo haiko kwa county na hawako kwa serikali kuu. Sasa swali yangu ni hii, nyinyi kama ofisi ya land, vitu kama hiyo mnaacha tu, ni nani ambayo iko kwa mkono ya nani? Tunataka kujua. Credit pia, hawa credit ambayo wameongea mambo ni nzuri.
Umeuliza mingi sana.
Ni mingi. Wacha tu niulize nimalizie mkuu.
Sawa.
Hata wamama hawajaongea tangu asubuhi.
Kweli, chukua.
Wacha niongee tu.
Sawa, chukua.
Wa mama wote.
Sawa.
Kwa sababu hata pia ni jaledi wa mama.
Sawa.
So mambo ya credit tumefundishwa. Lakini mpaka sasa itabidi mteremuke chini. Kwa sababu kwa ukweli community bado hawajaelewa hii jambo, ni mambo nzuri sana. Lakini kwa watu watatu ulisema kwamba iko watu watatu community, iko mtu anaitwa broker. Na hakuna kitu tunaogopa kama mtu anaitwa broker. Kwa sababu hatujui na broker nani. Hatujui ni community ama ni serikali ama ni nani katikati. So tuangalieni, kwa sababu mpaka tuje tufafanue broker huyu ambaye ni Elizabeth ana broke nini? Ana broke shamba nani ama ana broke kutoka pande gani? Ni mzuri tuelewe, kwa sababu ni kitu nzuri, ninajua kabisa mimi hiyo nimefundishwa, lakini wiko watu wengi sana ambayo bado hatujaelewa, na sisi ni wafugaji. Asanteni sana.
Asante sana. Next hapa. Ore chukua.
My name is Ore. I represent an organization called Rebuilding Pastoralist Livelihood kutoka Marsabit. Na kwanza nataka kuwashukuru wale panelists kwa kutuhamasisha kuhusu mambo mbalimbali. My first question is on issues on land.
And the only question.
No, but it is interconnected.
Okay.
The one I have.
One question.
Okay. Ni mambo ya kuhusu mambo ya ardhi. Jambo moja, one thing which is coming alive nowadays, we need to realize is that there is increasingly land fragmentation also coming up in pastoral areas, especially among the elite people like me, and that means we are losing land. In that case, then what is in that case connected with the land fragmentation is land use system. Like spatial plan. We don't have land use, proper land use system. And I think there is need to have, maybe recommending one of the asks we need to do here is how can we enable counties or ASAL areas to have a spatial plan. I know it's a bit expensive, but if we are serious, where there is that deliberate desire to do it, funds can always be obtained.
Imetosha. Wacha mwingine achukue.
Just allow me to kindly.
Umeuliza swali kubwa sana ya spatial plan.
Na hata kiko ingine tena ya community land registration, please.
Sawa, ya mwisho.
See, the other one, pastoral communities. Pastoralism dependent on mobility, as Jarsa has rightly said. If you have talk about land in Asal region, we also talk about pastoralism. Now, my fear is when we do community land registration, and it's a word-based, the normal tradition where there is that mobility during times of stress, where some communities as far from Marsabit come to Isiolo. How do you manage that we don't interrupt that process of sharing? That is my, when we are doing community registration, I think we need to take into account that kind of, we need to take into account that aspect of sharing, and also the issue of land governance. I think I want to ask the person from Ministry of Land. I think land governance is a wanting issue in Kenya, and it boils down to the ministry itself. So how do you ensure that there is no malpractices when it comes to community land registration, knowing our behavior as Kenyans in that aspect? Because a friend of mine was sharing with me a story that when they were doing community registration in Turkana, already there are people who are having title deed when they pick from drones. You know, and they are
okay,
not aware,
thank you. Next please. Yeah, let's have just, yes, you have the mic, go. Let's have these two and then we will respond to it.
Yes, Makambo Lotorobo is my name.
Yes.
And I think I have a question. Don't you think that, as pastorists, we are supposed to be paid for the work that pastorists have been doing, conservation, for many centuries? Because this is not a new idea to the pastoralists. The pastoralist life has been conservation all their life. So the issue of soil carbon credit, I think we expect compensation for the work that we've been doing all those years.
I think
on another note, it's important for the county assemblies to enact legislation to secure grazing land and migratory routes, just as has been done by the Tana River Livestock Grazing Bill. I think this is a good practice.
Thank you. Next, the last two, and then we come back to the panel. We were supposed to have stopped at 4, and we are now 4:30.
Thank you very much. My name is Kevin Samburu, Chairman, Grazing Committee. My question is on carbon credit fund, 60% and 40%, which is going to conservancies. There is that 20% that is going for operation, and that 20% going for rangeland and peace and environmental operations. So now that you are saying the 20% is going to operations, and yet our conservancies usually has the funds for operations. Mm-hmm. So that means it duplicates the work.
So double charge.
So double charge.
Yeah.
And it happens because we are the beneficiaries of carbon.
Thank you.
In terms of bursaries, there is no increase. In terms of the operation now, you are putting again to the conservancy those funds.
I think it's clear. The question is very clear.
Yes, the last
Asante.
one. Last one.
Yes.
I think that one is general. Now that carbon credit is pure science, and our people are illiterate, so we need more civic education to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Asante Sana. The last one? Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, panelists, for being very generous in terms of giving us very good points. So 2 comments very quick. So the first one is
What's your name?
Yeah, my name is Humphrey Jogo.
Humphrey, okay.
So I work with a public think tank called KIPRA, Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis.
Okay.
So one of my issues is I did a research on in terms of trying to understand what could actually be issues that are actually making us not to really handle the land problem in this country. And I came to realize that one, we have an issue of data. And I don't know, I know Amos talked about many things that we are doing as a country, but what can we do so that we can actually be able to sort out this problem of data once and for all? Because even the issues that I've actually been talking about since morning, I can see they all pointing to data. So even if we are going to, register the, in terms of the community land and all that, so you still find that we're still going back to the issues of land, data. So let's maybe think about a very progressive way of addressing this. My second comment is on the automation of land records. So what is so difficult in terms of automating records at the county level? My recent study indicates that a lot of land records are still manual. So what is the issue that we are not able to automate this? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Efrey. That's a very clear question. Let's stop there, then we can go round 2 if we have time. I'm afraid time is also not on our side. So can we start with the first point question around Wildlife Act, the most ideal land size or some land for pastoralists? The question around hybrid and all that is a very interesting question. I'm sure it is very interesting question in the sense that individualization doesn't go with pastoralism. But we are looking at hybrid. How do you connect? So Amos, which is the best model? Yeah, by the way, you have many questions, Amos. Can you address all of them? Yes, there are several of them. There was that one. There was many other questions around land. I want to give you opportunity to address that, and then we can ask others to. Shibi has a lot of other carbon questions. Dida has raised issues that are very unclear. I think Siad has talked about that. You need to address that question of Siad. Very, very important question you addressed. Thank you.
Asanteni sana. Ukiona watu wanauliza maswali inamaanisha walikuwa wanasikiza. And I want to answer the way vile nilisikia. A question can be asked, then you understand it indifferently. The first question was how
can people in pastoralists benefit from their land the way others have been benefiting, especially the ones who have privatized or individualized their land? When you look at the Community Land Act, the spirit was to deliver that title kwa sahani moja, because that is the nature of pastoralists. And the pastoralist land can only benefit pastoralists if they allow animals to move freely. And for your information, niko na information kidogo ya ufugaji. Okay, nilikuwa nasema hivi, niko na information kidogo on the science of pastoralism. Keeping many animals do not cause or do not degrade the environment. What degrades the environment is the time spent by animals in one place. Even one cow roaming and spending time in one place can degrade that land. Unaweza kuwa na ng'ombe 1,000, but as long as zinatoka hapa zinaenda Wajir, zinapitia Moyale, zinarudi hivi huku, unakuta they are allowing the environment to heal. And that's the nature of pastoralists. Now, the same law allows people to own land individually in that community land. But for that to happen, it has to be passed by 2/3 majority of the community assembly. Community assembly is a sitting of all adult members who are in the community members register. I know that the ratio is very high. Lakini swali tunavaa tujiulize now. We know where these pastoral lands are. And uko Komu. Why should you want your 10 acres as a person? Uko Merit, uko Komu, uko Turubi. Unless it is in a number area. Uko mashinari, uko ndani. Why should you uanze kufunga, you want to isolate others, you want to restrict others from accessing? No, it's a matter of, let us be practical. But if you can convince the community assembly, you want your 20 acres, 200 acres within that community land, na community assembly wakubali, there is a provision for you to get a certificate of customary land tenure issued by and signed by the community land management committees. Okay, you'll re-ask it. Thank you. Somebody from Kajiado South, there are plans to have an office in Mashuru. That is in Kajiado South. Those plans are there. The way we opened a land registry in Ngong, Mashuru. By the way, we have 3 land registries in Kajiado. In Ngong, that is in Ngong, Kajiado West, and Kajiado itself. Then there is a proposed one in Mashuru. I know this is a personal question. On school titling program, but I sit in that committee that seeks to secure all public lands, mosques, churches, schools. I sit in that committee. If you can give me the particular titles, where they are. And I know the whole of Kajiado, if they are not in urban areas, they are in former group branches, so they are public lands. That to me is very easy. Give me the details, and I will cause the titles to be released to those institutions. Now, government offices that occupied some lands, the lands were closed and the fate of those spaces or those lands. Now, and this applies everywhere. And the government officers are mostly they are in urban areas. If it's a government office, ambaye amekuwa allocated land here, and you don't secure that land, an allocation by the county government is not ownership. That's an indent. You are supposed to escalate that one. You have it planned, you have it surveyed, you process a title. If it has no title, and possibly that office becomes defunct, the county government can sit and reallocate that land. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is, that's within their purview. You won't say it has been grabbed because you are not there to use it, or you didn't secure it. Land fragmentation in pastoralist areas. You talked of the spatial plan. Section 13, 18, and others provide for planning, reserving before registration. 22 talks of planning after registration. The community itself can reserve their land for particular part. You can reserve this one for settlement. You can reserve this one for agriculture. You can reserve this one for conservation, for whatever purposes. And by the way, as a government officer, I have no business advising communities. I will be overstepping. What interest do I have? You serve the people the way they want. Now, community land, okay, it's dependent on the mobility. When you were asking your question, I did not interrupt you. It is now my time to answer. Now, I want to give you an example, two examples of Wajir and Isiolo. Wajir, there was a time when they wanted to register the whole of Wajir South in one title. We agreed to do it that way until they revised it. Isiolo County, to secure their communal lands, they identified all their urban centers and they gazetted them. They said whatever is left is community land. And that's where we are going. So it's a matter of being organized and knowing what you want. Thank you.
Asante sana. Thank you. I think there's this burning question. This is the only one I will allow, the one for Siad. What's the value of this conservation if it is not increasing our number of our livestock and it's not adding value to our life? What is it? What is its use? I think this is a very important question. I'm sure there's a question on the data. I pushed in to be able to have a conversation with you. Thank you. I hope your question was taking a lot of time. Please look at legal notice 1 of January 2020. It will answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Siad. When I was speaking here, I saw the question coming. We normally have, yes, I was looking at the non-verbal. So I just read the signal. So thank you for that question. Actually, I briefly stepped out and somebody was recording it for me. So how can conservancies help pastoralists to manage their grazing land? Any proof of positive change? If I'm wrong, you will correct me. Any proof of positive change due to conservancy involvement, maybe increase in numbers of goats, cows, and drought resilience. That's a good question. It's a very good question you've asked. In summary, you're basically asking the benefit of conservation in our pastoral system, right? So if I may, first of all, put it very, very clear in context, and we are here at the National Pastoralist Conference. What do we, and yesterday we had a long afternoon here discussing the livestock economy. And I mean, you are an expert in that area. What is the aggregate, or what we can call the net benefit of livestock economy success to us as the pastoralists? Is it about having 1,000 cows, or it's having a certain number of cows which can yield equivalent or even more than what 1,000 cows are producing? Okay, so that is food for thought for you. So secondly, on how our model works, and synchrony with the pastoralist model, is the NRT model is just takes you back what our forefathers were doing. For instance, if you walk around our landscape in northern Kenya, 200, 300 years ago, our people were living side by side with livestock, with wildlife, elephants roaming around, zebras, giraffes, cows are coming back, moving, hyenas eaten one of them, two of them. Even right now, it's continuing like that. So there's nothing new. The only thing new, Siad, right now, is the role of science. So all the discussion around how to quantify what you are saying in the scope of data science, in the scope of issues like, satellite imagery, in the scope of things like what they call remote sensing. And I'm sure Shibia is going to mention on this. The model that we now use is the NDVI model for capturing, the vegetation monitoring and all that. So I'm giving you an example of Westgate Conservancy, just as a direct answer, instead of moving in circles. As a conservancy that... So Westgate Conservancy, because you asked which conservancy has an example, and you'll find time, you'll go there, is a case of success of rotational grazing planning, where communities have seen yield increased value in terms of animal health, in terms of disease control, in terms of body, all that. It's a fact. Even carbon sequestration. I'm being pressured here, so we'll talk other things separately. Westgate is a key success point. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a question around carbon credit, but the answer. Yes, I gave you opportunity, you never said that. He said there's data around that, I think, which is, he didn't give us. But can you follow him up and get that data? And there was a question around carbon. I don't want a lot of story, but the question around carbon, what has come out is that it's a science. People are largely, many of them have not gone to school. It requires a lot of civic education. I do agree with that comment. I think that comment is very valid. The issue around data on the land from Kipra, I think this is an important one. Almost something I know registry is not able to provide that. Issues about automation of land, I know there are issues there. Otherwise, I think we are pressurized for time. I don't want to give even the panels any more questions. Please don't tell a story. Just answer the question directly, if I have to give you 1 minute. Thank you.
Wazee nilisema pesa ya carbon 14.6 million US dollars imeenda kwa community. In Kenyan shillings, kuna vile wao wamejipanga, community wamejipanga, lakini hiyo hesabu naijua. Audit report yangu wao ndo watasign, watalaunch. Kwa hivyo, pesa basari mbona haipandi, sijui, wajiulize wako kwa community, pesa iko kwao. Number 2, every credit a claim must be having evidence. So, scout wako huko, conservancy team wako huko, ukitaka vuta kazi hawa, sio shida yangu. But additionality is what we want. Nilisema for every performance na kudungia credit. So ukitoa hawa watu wote, there is no additionality, then it's no longer credit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really want to thank my panelists. This has been a very tough question. But I think one thing which has come out for me is that the issue around livestock and land is key area for this area that we need really to focus on more than any. There's a lot of interest. The question by Makambo around why our communities are not paid for conservation work, which they have done for many years. Very good question. I think they need to come on board and be taken forward. Otherwise, I want to thank all of you for the patience. Najua watu wamekosa chai kwa sababu kukaa hapo ndani. I say thank you very much, my panelists. I think it was not easy, but you've really delivered it. Asante sana. Thank you, madam. I want to take it back to you. Asanteni sana.
A round of applause for our panelists. Moderator, please stay on stage. Would like to call the other moderators. This feedback. I would like to call upon the other moderators who will take us through the 3-minute key asks and takes from the conversations that happened in the break room. But I think it's clear, even for the people that are here, and in terms of moving forward, the conversations on carbon credit are sensitive because there's a lot of information out there. There's a case especially of what is happening in Tanzania with the Maasai, who are being pushed out of their ancestral land. And people are linking this to carbon credit, to trophy hunting. So these are conversations that really must be addressed and people understand exactly what is going on. So please, I would like to call on the moderators to come on stage for the different sessions that we had broken out for. So we do a quick recap of the asks and the key issues as we proceed. But as we wait for them to come on stage, maybe just to create a perspective and paint a picture. Because a lot of times in conversations of sustainability, mara nyingi inakaa ni kama Afrika sisi ni new kwetu ama ni kitu geni. But kila saa Rashida nikiinsist that hivi ndio wazazi wetu, wazee wetu waliishi. Kwa hivyo tunajikumbusha tu huku tukieka the new innovations and information that is available. Because the other question I would ask is, Africa is responsible for only 3% of the pollution, of the carbon emissions that are produced. But yet Africa is paying the most for this pollution. My concern would be, I would want to know what the 97% of the developed countries are keen on in terms of tackling. Okay. All right, so I would like to know what these other developed nations who are responsible for the 97% of the pollution are also actively doing. And now, because of time, we might not be able to have the key asks session. So, Mr. Moderator, I would like you to kindly step down. We will not have time for that. Thank you so much for the great work that you have done. All right, so just to briefly appreciate all our partners who have made this conference a success, definitely KSG and the team. We are really appreciative of the effort, of the idea, because I don't think I have ever heard of an idea like this. And yule mama wa Kajiado South akiongea nimesikia very represented. Kwa wale hawajui Kajiado South, Loitoktok iko Kajiado South. Kwa hivyo hiyo ni area yetu na ni ukweli lazima uende Kajiado uhangaike na Loitoktok is completely the other side. So hizi ni conversations ambazo for a lot of us who live in arid and semi-arid areas, they are timely. Na ni one platform where you have the experts and the people who are the beneficiaries. So ideas zozote ambazo zinazungumziwa hapa ni rahisi kuimplement kwa sababu unajua huyu ana deal na hii, huyu ana deal na hii. So it is that follow-up mechanism that we now need to be very keen on. So I would now like to, it's later on that I'll introduce the video. Yes, as we prepare for the closing ceremony, just to remind you that our chief guest for the closing ceremony, Professor Noura Mohammed, who is the Director General, Kenya School of Government, and the PS State Department of Arid and Semi-Arid Lands, Mr. Kelo Harsama, is also here to lead us in the closing ceremony. So as we wait for them, let's enjoy some good music.